feel that. Thank you. Om Vishnu Bhattaya Krishna Bhastaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pachaline Nivasesha Sunyavadi Pashtatara Satanine Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sari Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare. Okay, so we didn't record that first part. Anyway, for those who were here, you heard it. Hare Krishna. Okay, Sachari Mother, you had your hand as usual raised first enthusiastically. So it's actually at the paragraph beginning as promised. Let us now dissect.
Okay, thank you. As promised, let us now dissect an individual Sankalpa. We have established that all successive steps of a Sankalpa have similar characteristics, albeit differently motivated and buttressed. But what is the common psychology and mechanics of making the determination to move up from one level of bhakti to the next? Let us keep in mind that knowledge of the steps up the ladder of devotion are based on studying the steps a living entity takes down the ladder of conditioning. In other words, the premise is that the process of liberation is like the reverse of conditioning. Just as the process of annihilation of the universe is similar to the reverse of creation. The Srimad Bhagavatam confirms this thesis. Just as clouds in the sky come into being and are then dispersed by the amalgamation and dissolution of their constituent elements, the material universe is created and destroyed within the absolute truth by the amalgamation and dissolution of its elemental constituent parts. We return to this example of a voice.
It's really bad.
Well, we can hear you, but there's a bit of interference there. Are you doing anything? Are you doing anything different there? Using the same mic, etc.?
No. Yeah, no.
The mic is not close to you, is it, Sacharani, as well? Sometimes it happens. Too close to you makes that noise as well.
Okay, we'll try best. Okay. If not, we can hear you.
Yeah, somebody else can read if it's a disturbance. No problem.
No, it's okay.
Someone else.
We can hear what you're saying, but we just have to tolerate a little bit of interference.
Okay.
If you can adjust it, fine. If you can't, you could just carry on.
I will try. If not, yeah.
Go on.
Okay. We return to the example of a novice who has just contacted Krishna consciousness.
Stop.
When the power of bhakti. Yeah, it's no good.
No, stop. Now it's fine. Something magic happened.
Okay. If even in a shadowy form touches the conditioned soul, the false ego, ahankara, weakens, and so a simple sense of spiritual identity is established. The mind, affected by the inherent goodness of devotion, begins to casually probe this newly proposed identity and its consequences. That is its nature. Sankalpa, Vikalpa. However, without guidance, the mind remains clueless as to how to properly process the newly proposed ego. Although lacking even the most basic understanding, a spark of spiritual desire has awakened in the mind, and that desire will increase in proportion to both knowledge and purification. When desire reaches a critical stage, then it will initiate a sankalpa. That said, if desire is not properly steered by the transcendental knowledge, the jiva will not know how to move forward or will err in doing so. Thereafter, intelligence inspired by the goodness of bhakti will be inclined to guide the mind towards its newfound identity. But the intelligence, too, without proper guidance, will neither know how nor be strong enough to do so.
I just pause.
But as the living entity acquires transcendental
just we've already embarked on the path of Sankalpa, each one of us to one degree or another, because we've all gone through the process of coming to Krishna consciousness. And then we've made decisions to actually take up the process of Krishna consciousness. Some of you may have made a Sankalpa to become strict veggie, perhaps before you wasn't. Then so you made that Sankalpa. Then you made a Sankalpa to not watch Coronation Street anymore. You made that Sankalpa. Then you made the Sankalpa to then chant 4 rounds a day. Then perhaps a Sankalpa to visit the temple once a week, like that. And then, so this is what Maharaj is getting at here. And so then it's Sankalpa, then there was 16 rounds, and then you got initiation, and then you got Diksha initiation. But as Maharaj will explain us, the conversation he was having just before this class began, is that it shouldn't stop there. That's the point. Okay, now you've got initiation, now you've got second initiation. Now you're dressing the deities. Now you're cooking for or whatever it may be. No, there's more Sankalpas, but the more we advance, then the Sankalpas become more Bhava Rupa, which means internal goals, internal states of mind in becoming Krishna conscious. But anyway, just reflecting that simple point that Maharaj is making here. Sankalpas in the rudimentary means, I desire to associate with devotees. I desire not to do this, vikalpa, I just thought I mentioned that so we can all relate to what's been spoken here. Yeah. So if there's not any questions on that, you can continue, Mother Sahachari.
Okay.
No, can I ask a question?
Please, Rajkishore.
What about if we make a sankalpa of like chanting that many rounds during Kartik, like 64 rounds during Kartik, and one of the days you can't do it? So that is a vikalpa. How do we handle that?
Well, you shouldn't torment yourself too much. I mean, you're doing well. If for some reason or another you can't manage one day, then still you're doing it the other day, so that's glorious. But that's a good example, and I think Maharaj will bring that up as you can practice Sankalpas, especially during Kartik. You can do that. You can take your sadhana, you can stretch your sadhana for a Sankalpa. For example, Mother Rajkishore is speaking about chanting extra rounds. Yeah, that's good. If you we should also, it's good to think things through before we make a Sankalpa. Say we make a Sankalpa of 64 rounds a day, and it happens to be that our in-laws are going to visit us for 2 weeks in the middle of Kartik. So that might be, we might want to perhaps think that through, whether we'll actually be able to do it. But if some days, I mean, sometimes I do that. I have little vows I make, and sometimes what can I do? Service comes up, needs have to be met, which I wasn't planning. Okay, what can be done? So I don't know if that answers your question, Mother Rajkishore. I mean, it's definitely not on the, there's a lot of worse things you can do.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I got a question. What I could think was, what Rajkishori was saying. What if we do make sankalpas, like, okay, it's Kartik, and I will be really serious. I want to really chant extra rounds, but don't make like, I wouldn't say I will do 64. I wouldn't do something like that, but I would try and do as much as I can. Is that okay?
What do you mean, as much service as you can?
No, as much, because if I'm at in Vrindavan.
Oh, okay. In regards to chanting.
Yeah,
like don't set a specific number.
Things like that. Yes.
Yeah, well, that was, again, that's kind of individual choice. For me, that wouldn't work, because if I didn't make a specific number and I made it too general, then I wouldn't really push. I really wouldn't kind of probably take it so seriously, because like, I do that anyway. You may do that anyway. Personally, whenever we get the chance, we chant extra rounds. But if you got a number, and that gives it that extra weight.
Right.
That gives it that extra. I mean, I'm speaking personally. I mean, that's like not a bad idea. You vow that you're going to do as much, chant as much as you can. But anyway, it should be a minimum of 16. But if you could take a minimum of 25 rounds, for instance, on Kartik, during Kartik, I'm going to do a minimum of 32 rounds. I'm not going to go below 32 rounds. And then everything is extra.
Yeah, that kind of thing.
So you can bring up your basic daily quota. And that will give you strength to actually follow that Sankalpa through. But if it's just vague, then maybe a vague attempt as well.
Right.
Oh.
Okay.
Yeah.
Prabhu,
Just, yes, Nitai Mata.
normal, I'm not referring to Karthik. Normally, if I think, okay, I want to chant this many rounds from today, and I have failed miserably after that. So what will happen, Prabhu, when you fail? You can attempt it?
Well, that's why it's important to really make sankalpas that you can achieve. Otherwise, you'll become disappointed.
Sankalpa, but still I failed, which I
No,
can achieve only.
that's
And
what I'm saying. You want to make realistic determinations. Like, for instance, for some of you, chanting 64 rounds might be unrealistic.
definitely not 64 for me, Prabhu. Oh no, I'm not that.
So I'm just, yeah, what I'm saying, that's why we have to be careful when we make promises or we make sankalpas. And because then we careful in the sense that if we don't achieve it, then it might cause us to be a little bit depressed. Oh, I didn't make it. So we want to do something that's achievable. So that's going to stretch us a bit. We're going to be stretched a bit beyond our normal comfort zone, but not too much where we're going to feel disappointed.
Uh,
I make achievable sankalpas. Like I say, I'm going to chant 32 rounds. I have the time, and somehow or other, things get in the way, and I can do it. But I really am sincere about doing it. But sometimes I do it, and sometimes, a lot of the times, it's just like you've
Falls
put
through your
yourself
hands. Yeah.
time, because the time just disappears, and you think, well, what happened?
Yeah.
You know, it may be a realistic goal, but somehow you don't have. Do you need a qualification to do that or something?
exactly. This is
Yeah,
what
that's why it's also I mean, how we can actually, it's almost, I mean, that's there's different levels of achievement. And one of the actually that Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur uses when he's in his book Madhurika Nambini, which I'm sure you're all familiar with, all heard that book. It describes different levels of bhakti. And it describes there's two levels of bhakti, as you know. There's anishta and there's nishta, I mean steady and unsteady. So actually, I mean, I'm preaching to myself as well. That's one of the symptoms of unsteady bhakti, that we make vows, that we make determinations, but we can't do it. You know, that means when maybe we need to perhaps that might be that then is a realistic sankalpa that, you know, I'm making this determination to chant this amount of rounds, and I've got to come to the stage where I'm actually going to do it. And that's the stage of steadiness. So something to reflect upon. Sometimes we might not be, in regards to making these determinations, we might not be so steady in that. Because there is a level where one does make these sankalpas, one does make these vows, and one sticks to it. You know? So at the same time, it's a little bit, it's good. It's a little bit of a challenge for us. I don't know if that answered your question, Mother Lavangalati, but I'm preaching to myself as well. That's actually happened to me, and I realized, when I was reading that in Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur, it's a symptom of unsteady devotion. He says you make determinations, you make vows, but then you can't keep it.
I can relate to that unsteadiness, and that
Yeah.
with me.
I mean, we're steady in some respects. We're steady in the principles. We're steady in the 16 rounds. But then when we try and stretch ourselves, our steadiness starts to shake a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have a limit.
So is that bhakti or determination is lacking, Prabhu?
Probably, yeah.
Which one is lacking, Prabhu?
Right, that's a great. Is it bhakti or is it determination? What would you say?
Determination, I think so for me. I don't know.
Yeah, determination. I think it's more, I think there's no doubting, you know, for Lavangalatika's devotion. It just may mean that just perhaps it's just determination. And I mean, because we happen to live in a world where there's lots of distractions, unfortunately. There's lots of things that can distract us. Probably be a little bit easier if we was living in a mud hut somewhere in the banks of Radhakund. Well, it depends. But there is a lot of, so perhaps this brings up the point that we should be careful when we make such sankalpas, that we don't want to make them too big. So if we don't achieve them, we become disappointed, and we don't want to make them too vague either. You know, we do want to make them very specific.
Prabhu, what happens if we stretch ourselves and then only few rounds are left and then you can't do it for some reason? And can you catch up the following day? Is that okay? But or has it to be done on the day when we do a sankalpa? Like 16 rounds, we have to do it, whether it's Janmashtami or whatever, Radhashtami, and we are so busy, but we still make sure we do our japa on the day.
And so you're saying you could take on extra rounds and then you're not able to do that. Yeah, so that would be I find that's good myself to do that, because it's a bit of a sweet punishment the next day. You know, because you have to chant extra rounds. You know, you have to chant extra. I say it's sweet punishment because it's chanting the holy name. So it's always good to feel you have a debt to pay. So the next day you're going to make it up. So you perhaps, you know, you wanted to chant 32 rounds, you only chanted,
28 or something like that.
You only chanted 28 or 25. So then you've got to chant 32 plus a few more.
Yes.
So that kind of a sweet punishment.
Yes.
Sorry,
Yes.
I just want to ask about Jalakadashi this week. You know, I'm not feeling even well today, and I'm already worried about how I'm going to do Nirjala Kadashi.
Yeah, Nirjal's coming up. Which day is that?
I think it's Thursday.
Friday. Yeah.
And yeah, I have service on Friday as well, and I'm
so you should. Yeah, Nirjal is not. What's the word? It's not mandatory.
Yeah.
It's not mandatory. I mean, in our temple, there's breakfast is served. And someone's invited me to lunch on Nirjala Kadashi as well. So I ain't going to be fasting on Nirjala Kadashi, you know. So it's not compulsory, Mother. It's not compulsory. You should just avoid grains. You should, yeah. Is that clear? Yeah, everyone? It's not compulsory.
You know, we won't be like missing out on some mercy if we don't follow it, or I don't want to miss out on anything.
No, generally, next Scripture Master it's often brought up that like this wasn't around in Prabhupada's days.
Yes, they didn't they didn't do Sankalpas in Kartik because they were already fully engaged.
So, I mean, some devotees did, but otherwise they're so busy. So, no, you're not going to, you're not going to get punished. I'm just reading the 5th canto at the moment. It describes the hellish planets. So don't worry, you're not going to be going down to the hellish realms if you don't do Nirjal.
I think it's like
only for Bhishma. It's only for Bhishma, because he didn't want to do other days.
Bhima, not Bhishma.
I'm sorry, Bhima. Yeah, first I said Bhima, then Bhima.
Where did you hear that from, Nitai Mata? Is that from Jayapataka Maharaj?
Prabhu, I think we all know about this.
Okay, so Nitai is bringing up an interesting take on this, is that actually it's only for Bhima.
No, I mean we can do it, Prabhu. I'm saying because he couldn't do all the Ekadashis, it was given it to him.
I understand.
Yeah, we can do it if you can do it.
You can do it. But it's not, main thing, it's not mandatory.
Yeah.
Especially if you don't do good fasting and your health is weak, then best you take, just you take fruits, you can eat simply, you can eat, just avoid grains.
Yeah.
Okay.
We did before, but not this year, I don't think.
Yeah, you find most devotees do in their youth, but once you start topping up the age, a lot of devotees find it difficult.
But one thing I wanted to say, Prabhu, my experience, when I think like that, somehow on that Ekadashi, you get energy from, don't know from where, that you don't want to drink water. At least until evening you can stay. It happens many times, Babu.
Yeah, it's
So-
so true. That's so true.
Yeah.
And if you like, you shouldn't torture your body. If you can't do it, don't do it.
Yeah.
You have to really be like in a proper state that you can at least chant, read, things like that.
But it happens.
If you like want to do it, Krishna just makes all the arrangement.
Yes.
Yeah.
All these past few fasting days and things like that. I'm Nishingadev like fasting till sunset.
Yeah.
He said, "Oh no, how am I going to do it? I've got to, be at the temple. I've got to do this, that, whatever." Krishna does it. Krishna
Yeah,
does.
so we've all experienced that. If we make the
Got to have that feeling.
determination. Yeah.
Chanting extras on Ekadashi. You think, oh, how is it going to work? I mean, Krishna, it's all depends on you. I am just wishing to do it, but Krishna, at the end of the day, he does it. Krishna, all the arrangement, he does it.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's a few thoughts getting ready for Niyajala Ekadashi. So we're all here. How many devotees we've got with us today? We've got quite a few actually. We've got 13, 14 devotees. So you're going to be, you've got Niyajala coming up. We're going to be practicing in your own way. But just remember, it's not compulsory. And it's meant to increase your chanting actually. The idea, less in, less out. That's one Maharaj would say. Nothing in, nothing out. You spend more time chanting the holy name. But if your health is not good, if you're feeling very weak, then should take care of your health. All right. Should we dive back in to Sankalpa? Sorry, I keep stopping Mother Sarchari. I forgot even where she stopped. Did you remember where we interrupted you again, Mother?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
Okay. Go on.
But as the living entity acquires transcendental knowledge, the intelligence begins to process what it has learned by first understanding the information, then overcoming doubts, and finally by mapping out its course of application. Originally, both the knowledge acquiring senses and the working senses are meant to be under the direction of the intelligence. But without Krishna consciousness, the mind becomes increasingly empowered by passion and takes control of both kinds of senses and makes them instruments of its contaminated desires. Now, however, with mind and intelligence seeing eye to eye on the path of purification, they conjointly direct the senses in appropriate ways. Examples of such appropriate engagement are reading the Bhagavad Gita and learning how to use japa beads. By these activities, the intelligence is further empowered by goodness, thereby attaining a semblance of control over the mind. The use of the word semblance here indicates that there will be a constant competition between the developing desire of the intelligence for spiritual growth and the long-standing desires of the mind for enjoyment.
Perhaps you can just
For the neophytes to progress, for him.
Perhaps if you just stop there, because there's quite a bit of interruption, feedback on your voice. But okay. Yeah. Any questions from that, or I'm sure we can all relate to that. The last sentence there. Competition between developing a desire of intelligence for spiritual growth and the long-standing desires of the mind for enjoyment. But when the mind is working together, then that's very good. Okay, let's.
So is that sakam? I mean, halfway, half nishtam and half sakam. I mean, halfway between.
You mean?
We are working. I mean, we are trying to engage, take Sankalpa, and then we are doing some material work as well as spiritual. Is that's not related, is it?
I don't know if I don't caught your question. I mean, what do you mean by work? You mean like maintaining the house?
Yes.
Going to work, etc.
Yes, and yes. And this as well as carrying out.
No, this is what Maharaj is what he's alluding to here is not that. I mean, that has to be, I mean, those activities that we do to maintain our house, to maintain our situation, that's not outside of the realm of pure devotional service. That comes up in the verse on Sunyam. Yeah, you're maintaining your situation. But Maharaj here is speaking about the desires to enjoy in this world, to enjoy the facilities of this world. So that's going against the grain of spiritual development. Yeah. So for some, that might be a struggle. You know, they're trying to, they're trying to develop spiritually, but at the same time, they've still got subtle residue desires to enjoy materially.
Yes.
So that can be a challenge.
Yes.
But that's what he's alluding to here. But the basics of maintaining a situation. I mean, yeah, that's not what he's. It doesn't mean we're in Maya if we go shopping. As long as we offer what we got to Krishna, it doesn't mean we're in Maya if we pay our mortgage.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Those are things we best not give up, otherwise we might, you know, unless you all want to join the ladies' ashram, might be difficult. All right? Yeah. So, Kurunamai, you like to read from, or was you reading, or someone's reading? I'm so sorry to stop reading and, yeah.
For the neophyte progress, for him to be freed from the anchors of past deeds, he must remain in the fire of purification. To do otherwise means to fall back into destructive habits, and that fire of purification burns only under the shelter of continuous sadhana and wise Vaisnavas. Lord Krishna confirms, having awakened faith in the... Is there background noise?
Yeah, is that in your place? Because you're the only one who's unmuted.
Is that better?
Yeah, that's better. Yes. So, okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Carry on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Having awakened faith in narrations of my glories, being disgusted with all the material activities, knowing that all sense gratification leads to misery, but still being unable to renounce all sense enjoyment, my devotion should remain happy and worship me with great faith and conviction. Even though he is sometimes engaged in sense enjoyment, my devotee knows that all sense gratification leads to a miserable result, and he sincerely repents such activities.
Okay, just quick pause here. So
Finally,
this is a mood of a quick pause here. This is a mood of a pure devotee who has still got who's still succumbing or still not is not making the grade. So pure devotee in intention. So this is their mentality. They don't justify their kind of dabblings in the material world, but they kind of feel what's the word, repentant and sorrowful, like that. Quite a well-known verse. Maharaj often quotes this verse. Yeah. So he continues sadhana. He continues. You know, carry on, mother. You can continue.
Finally, when the above-mentioned components are all in place, namely empowered intelligence, spiritual desire, purified consciousness, and a cooperative mind, at that time, an empowered volition will move the mind, the intelligence, the knowledge, acquiring senses, and the working senses to adopt more grateful sadhana. Initiative to embrace the new standard of sadhana is Sankalpa. That intensified sadhana, which for our novice may now mean eating 8 rounds and becoming vegetarian, initiate a heightened purification that becomes the cause of similar transformation in the subtle body. When that transformation hits the next tipping point, then the next Sankalpa can place. Again, the sequence of developments in the subtle body are purification of consciousness, increased spiritual desire, strengthening spiritual identity, easing of false ego, enlightened intelligence, and decreasing material desire. As a result of such enlightenment, the mind comes further under the control of purified intelligence and hence becomes a better instrument for both sadhana and for sankalpa. This is as much detail as we shall describe of the mechanics of sankalpa. Readers deserve a basic understanding of the actual subject of this book. Yet, as they proceed from one rung to the next up the bhakti ladder, sadhakas need not meditate on the intricacies of their transitions. Rather, they should keep in mind the great picture of attaining their goal. This general picture and its attainment is summarized by Sukadev Goswami in this way. When cloud originally produces from the sun is torn apart, the eye can see the actual form of the sun. Similarly, when the spirit destroys his material covering of false ego by inquiring into the transcendental science, he regains his original spiritual awareness. Once the cloud of the past bad habits has dissipated, as a consequence of successful upward sankalpas, the mind begins to sober up and become proactive participant in its own emancipation. Like the bad patient who is finally begins to cooperate with the convalescence prescribed by his doctor, and the mind begins to cooperate with the guidance directed by the intelligence.
Okay, I just pause
While
there.
serious preparation already begins at the stage of Nishtha.
She can't hear me. Hare Krishna, just sorry, Baba, just pause there. I think my volume's a bit low, so can't hear. So this we've been in our discussions. I think this is what a lot of this is the mood which what I'm hearing is a lot of you are in, where you start to actually take joy of challenges. You actually, to now Ekadashi is coming up. I want to do this, So that means the mind is becoming our friend. That's what Marge is mentioning here. They're like here. The mind begins to sober up and becomes a proactive participant in the different determinations that we make. It doesn't complain so much, You're actually right, because you've experienced previously that actually you're getting a higher taste, so therefore your mind is becomes a proactive participant. Yeah, I just want to bring it's just reminded me.
Does that mean?
Yeah.
Sorry, Murli Prabhu. Does that mean that sometimes you just automatically do this and you don't even realize that you've taken on some sankalpa?
Yeah,
and
that's
taken that sankalpa and you've just carried it out.
Yeah, it is, and that's why interesting. Raj mentions that. I couldn't quite grasp it first, but now hearing you speak, Mahakunamai, that's what he is explaining. Sometimes, like Raj is really dissecting it here, because the chapter's called the Sankhya of a Sankalpa. But these things will be going on in their own natural way for devotees. Yeah. For devotees, we'll be making these different sankalpas, like I will not watch YouTube for the whole of Kartik. Sankalp, I will not do that, I will going to read today. So these are things we make, probably some of you make on a daily basis. I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, So more just, So just agreeing with you, Mother Kunamai. That's what it means. But then the point I'm making here, the point that will come up as we continue reading through all these pages, is that there's Sankalpas doesn't stop at, it keeps on going, throughout the whole spiritual life. We should be making these Sankalpas. Marge describes other Sankalpas, these Sankalpas at Bhava and at Ruchi and things like that he describes. And the next chapter he's given, check the time, he's given examples, types of Sankalpas, which are in Sastras, in the Srimad Bhagavatam, and it's quite a lot of them. So thank you for bringing that out, Mother Kudamai. That's correct.
Thank you.
Yeah, continue reading.
Haribol, Prabhu. Sometimes you make a Sankalpa and you don't seem to forget. It just is like automation. You know, you make a progress that you made a Sankalpa, like doing things for the deities, but you do it automatically eventually. You don't even have to think.
Yeah, I think that's what Maharaj is alluring to here in that verse, in that last paragraph. He describes, I'll read it again. This is as much detail as we shall describe of the mechanics of Sankalpa. So there's a basic understanding is there of the actual subject of this book. Yeah. Need not meditate on the intricacies of their at least I think that's what he means. Need not meditate on the intricacies of the different transactions.
Yes. So you carry on doing. I mean, once you make a Sankalpa.
Yeah. So like we keep the mind. Yeah. So we keep like the mind, like the greater picture, and then if you're going for the greater picture, then you're going to be filling in the details of how to get to that greater picture automatically.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Right. Sure. Perhaps we
you know, when you just said how the mind is becoming your friend, I just realized it just now as you said it, that it does how to make your mind your friend, the way you just said it. Like when you want to do something like Ekadashi coming up, okay, I'll think I'll do it like this, and the mind's not complaining.
Yes, so true.
Yeah. The mind can be a best friend or worst enemy. Yeah, so that's where the mind is. It's like the tipping point.
Mm-hmm.
But it's interesting because in spiritual life it's quite dynamic in the sense that you're going to be comfortable taking on some sankalpas of determination, but then other things may be called upon you to come to different levels that you're not quite, the mind is going to kick up about it. So certain things we're comfortable, and that's probably good. Certain things we're comfortable in moving up, but then there's other things that come to us where perhaps we need to, the mind is not so on board. You know? So then we have to,
work with.
Okay. We have to work on it,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So perhaps it's getting a bit late. Perhaps we have Mother Anupama. You could read. You have your hand up there. You could take us back. Tend to find off where we left.
I think it's while serious. Yeah.
I think it is. If anyone can.
Yeah, that's where it is. You have to start.
Yeah.
While serious cooperation already begins at the stage of Nishta, it transits from dutiful to natural at Ruchi and Asakti. Spontaneous attraction is a phenomenon to be expected since the mind is a product of goodness, and so service is its latent inclination. As purification brings the mind closer to its original state, it becomes increasingly inclined to spiritual practice until ultimately that inclination becomes exceedingly intense. This is spiritual greed. Because the mind can be such a great asset to the controlled sadhaka, Krishna calls it a friend, bandhu. And while the mind can be a good friend, it is a friend one is advised to remain wary of. Spiritual authorities warn practicing devotees to never trust the mind, regardless of how much it cooperates with their sadhana, bhajana. For example, Sukdev Goswami warns, "My dear king, you have spoken correctly. However, after capturing animals, a cunning hunter does not put faith in them, for they might run away. Similarly, those who are advanced in spiritual life do not put faith in the mind. Indeed, they always remain vigilant and watch the mind's action."
Yeah, very interesting. This is an interesting point. And just to give you a context of this verse that you just read, Maharaj Parikshit is questioning, because devotees, perfected devotees, have all mystic powers at their disposal. So Maharaj Pariksha is asking, why don't they exhibit or make use of, and if you know these mystic powers, they're pretty fantastic, what the jiva is capable of. So then Sukadeva Goswami brings up this point that the devotee is very careful. So he's not gonna, he's very careful about how, he's very careful. Just to give you context of that verse. Okay, sorry to interrupt.
No problem. Since the contaminated mind is the repository of lust, anger, pride, greed, lamentation, illusion, and fear, which combined represent the shackles of material bondage, astute sadhakas do not put faith in the mind at any time.
Wow.
Devotees worry that, if not restrained, the mind could once again welcome these enemies and compromise their austerities.
Yeah, sorry to keep on interrupting, but this
No
comes.
problem.
That's why it's very important, because if one falsely thinks I've reached a certain level of devotion, I've reached a certain level of attainment, that I can move around in the material energy and I'm going to be okay. You know, I can watch this, I can go there, I can do this, I can do that, I can do it, but it's okay because I've reached a certain level of attainment. No, then one will become, then that is danger. You understand that point? Yeah, so we always have to be, even if we're even if one is very, very advanced, they do not take chances. Yeah, they do not play with the material energy in any way, even if one is very advanced. Because
We take the example of Sri
Right.
Prabhupada.
yeah, he would pray. Probably, is that what you mean? He probably would pray that he doesn't fall down. Is that what you mean, Nitai Mata?
Yes, Prabhu. Remember always that example.
Yeah.
How it's-
Yeah, so for example, you may have been practicing, I say maybe practicing for many years, but doesn't know, so I can go, it doesn't matter. I can not come to the temple for a year or so, have a break. I'm gonna be all right. It's all right, like that, I'm gonna indulge in this a little bit and a little bit here, but it's okay. It's not we have to always be vigilant, Anyway, yeah, you can carry on, Mother. Sorry, I jumped in there again.
No problem. Examples of yogis who fell from their perfection are Lord Shiva, who became bewildered at the sight of Mohini, and Subhari Muni, who was similarly stricken by seeing mating fish. The lesson to learn is that while the mind may be an invaluable instrument, it should never be let loose. Considering the example of the chariot, the reins of the mind should be tightly held in the hands of a spiritually robust intelligence. When a devotee ascends the ladder of successive sankalpas and arrives at the stage of mature attachment, his sadhana qualifies him for divine mercy, a shower of nectar which manifests in its own time. Until it does, a devotee can only cry and yearn for it. For when mercy descends upon a fortunate soul, he will have attained the goal of his devotions in the way it has been promised by learned authorities. When devotional service is executed on the transcendental platform of pure goodness, it is like a sun ray of love for Krishna. At such a time, devotional service causes the heart to be softened by various tastes, and one is then situated in bhav, emotion. The chapters of this part of Sankalpa Kaumudi offer a view into the workings of the various aspects of the subtle body, which, when properly aligned for bhakti, serve sadhakas in their determination to attain bhav. In this chapter, we have attempted to give a closer look at how the aspects of the subtle body work together to realize the devotee's vow to advance towards the goal of life. Knowledge of the inner dynamics of determination should be helpful to readers to make those sankalpas happen. Such knowledge is an instrument for sharpening the intelligence, and especially astute intelligence is always welcome in keeping the mind under control and helping it make the right choices in Krishna consciousness. By way of conclusion, we would like to offer a well-known verse as a means by which readers can easily understand and remember the process of Sankalpa. The The verse is a rule of thumb for what Sankalpa is and how it works. Whatever state of being one remembers when he quits his body, O son of Kunti, that state he will attain without fail. Krishna's explanation is clear. We paraphrase it slightly. The nature that one attains at death by one's accumulated actions throughout life determines in detail the kind of body and life one next attains. In his purport, Srila Prabhupada writes, one's thoughts during the course of one's life accumulate to influence one's thoughts at the moment of death. So this life creates one's next life. Similarly, whatever sadhana one has performed, the sankalpa into which that matures will determine one's next sadhana. This is exemplified in Srimad Bhagavatam, where Brahma gave up his body in shame at thinking of forbidden sex. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains that since Brahma's duration of life was already determined, his change of body was actually a change of mental disposition. Similarly, a sadhaka's rise from one rung of the devotional ladder to the next indicates a change in his mental disposition. Thus, the state of being at death in the above verse may also be understood as a change of disposition or change of Krishna consciousness. To summarize, the kind of Krishna consciousness one practices will result in a corresponding sankalpa, and that sankalpa will determine the next rung on the bhakti ladder, one's next level of Krishna consciousness. This principle is shared by the maxim explained earlier. Siddhyasha.
Just read the translation, Rob. It's
Okay.
fine.
The practitioner and the means of practice should be in accord with their goal. This completes our discussion on the on the Sankhya of Sankalpas. The next part of the book will give examples of determinations, both general and specific. We hope that as the reader progresses, he or she is able to better perceive the dynamics of moving up the ladder of sadhana bhakti and be increasingly inspired to do so.
Okay. Hari Om Tat Sat.
That's it.
Hare Krishna. Okay, I guess it's a good place to stop for today. It's just about 6:59. We'll stop there and we'll continue next Monday and part 4 of the book, types and examples of Sankalpa. So we're going to hear that taken from Srimad Bhagavatam and other places. Okay, so thank you everyone for joining us, and please, if you feel you want to join us tomorrow, please do. We'll be continuing with our questions and answers from Sudha Bhakti Chintamani. So we will be asking you questions, and you can look beforehand if you want for that and get ready for that. I look forward to tomorrow at 6
Thank you.
same time. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Muli Prabhu. He's great. Muli
Thank
Prabhu.
you, Prabhu.
Hari Bol, everyone.
Krishna. Gotta find the Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
I can't find the button to stop the meeting. It's disappeared. Anyway, Hare Krishna.
Really?
Okay, Hare Krishna. Hare Bol.